Thank you for joining us today to another edition of I Love Black People. So my name is Tushime Yvonne, and I'm currently in Rwanda, and I'm your host for today's call. So feel free to interact in the comment section, and also you can even introduce yourself, your name, the country, and whether you're a member, and the date you joined the movement. So thank you. So as usual, before we start, we always pray in our local language. I'm going to pray for you in Kinyarwanda. That's my local language. Yes, so we can pray. Let's pray. Uwiteka Mana nziza, turagushimiye turaguhimbaje, turakwiriza gukomeza ubumwe natwe, komeza twigaragarize, uduhere umugisha mu cyo turi gukora, kandi uturinde ikibi n'igisa nacyo, twiyambaje mu izina rya Yesu Kristo. Yes, so that was my prayer in my local language. We are going to start our call. So today's meeting, we're going to have different country speakers. And after the country speakers, we're going to have the Pan-African Healthcare with Nana Akua. She'll be helping us to understand more about stress relieving and detoxification. And also we're going to have the Pan-African History class with Dr. Tyreen Wright, where she will take us through the history classes. So feel free to, in case you have any question, you can just put it in the comment section. And then we're going to start and have our first speaker. She's our sister from the Gambia, Binta Jallo. Can you hear us? You can unmute yourself. Yes, Binta, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself. Okay. I think she's having some issues with her microphone. We can continue with Afiki Mbia from Zimbabwe. Yes, Afiki, can you hear us?
Yes, Yvonne, I am hearing you.
Okay, yes, you're welcome. You have a few minutes to present your report.
Oh, thank you. My name is Afikimbi, ambassador from Zimbabwe. Good evening, good afternoon, depending on where we are. Today, I'm just going to present on the issue about the 23rd, the national harmonized elections, which we had. And the elections were peaceful, no violence. Obviously, we might not know some of the things that might have happened in the rural areas, in the remote places, whereby most probably they might fail to have enough media or something that can make them to be known that there was violence. But truthfully, this year, our harmonized elections were good. No arson, no violence, no. Yeah, obviously there are some other videos that are circulating and some messages that are doing rounds on social media, which are not true. Of course, they are false. That there is a violence and people are being brutally beaten. Those are lies. As of hence, we have got nothing like that. And as they are counting the votes, I am glad that everything is just going good, smooth, swiftly. And this time around, Zimbabwe is a peaceful environment, and everybody is happy. Everybody, I want to say so, or maybe I should say almost everybody is happy with whatever that is happening. And the SADC, the observers from SADC, they came and Also, they are making sure everything is going well. And indeed, they are doing a good job. And we are supporting them in all ramifications. So thank you so much. I am because we are. Thank you so much.
Okay, yes, thank you very much for that update of the country. Thank you, Afikimbia from Zimbabwe. Up next, we're going to have our brother Fontekwe from Cameroon. And we are also live from Facebook. Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, my fellow Pan-Africans. I am because we are. Yeah, I am from the very first place. I am called by the name His Royal Highness from Tekwe. So I am so much delighted to participate in this edition of our Pan-African Call. And once again, I am because we are. So first things first, in line with the topic of discussion, which is empowerment of youth against Afrophobia. And before I proceed, sorry, I'm from Cameroon. I forgot to mention my country. So I am representing Cameroon, Africa in nature, as we all know. So, like I was saying, the empowerment of youth against Afrophobia, which we all know that Afrophobia is the hatred of the African race of Black people, which is something that even God Himself does not acknowledge that. So, looking around today, right from the previous centuries, the African race has always been regarded as, in fact, we all know, as black monkeys and all the rest, as a race which is so much inferior. But that notwithstanding, we all have seen the changes that are already on ground, that the African race is taking over. And this race, nothing can stop us from rising. We will all rise. So looking around today, even though in Africa, yeah, on the African continent, some formidable people have accumulated power in their hands, which has retarded youth from taking part in politics. But this platform that we have gathered ourselves is to prove them wrong, that we youth, we are the future of tomorrow, and we are supposed to take part in politics. We have the young blood in us. We have what it takes to change the future, and we are moving towards that. So aside from that, there are so many things that are also retarding youth from taking part in politics. If you look around today, maybe in Africa, for example, and forgetting the other youth, the other African youth that are outside of the continent. My focus is on the African continent. If you look at some of the things that are retarding youth from taking part in politics, is that what they do in schools. For example, they don't study politics, they don't study things that are related to politics, but they also want to take part in politics. So we also have to dedicate some of our time, we youth, to follow things that are related to politics, so that we will know when we want to enter politics, we will know the right path of the economy to engage ourselves in and make changes. So thank you. I have really much to say, but time is not on my side. And like I always say, I am because you are.
Yes, thank you very much, Fontekwe. I am because we are. Thank you for that wonderful report. Yes, up next, you're going to have our brother Shahid Kasim from Ghana. Yes, Shahid Kasim, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I can hear you. Good
Yes,
afternoon, everyone on this platform. I'm Shahid once again speaking on behalf of Ghana. Our topic today is youth empowerment against Afrophobia. And as we're all aware, Afrophobia is a perceived hatred for the Black race. So as youth, we have an important role to play as far as projecting or promoting inclusivity, as far as promoting and then avoidance of racial discrimination. These are the few ways I think we can, as youth, help to, do away with all forms of Afrophobia or xenophobia. First of all, as youth, it is important upon us to first of all educate our fellow youth, educate everybody on the need for us to acknowledge each other, not based on racial. So the first thing we should do is education. We should educate people to understand that the color shouldn't be a yardstick for anything. God has created us in very unique ways and for the purpose of recognition, but not to create enmity or division among one another. The other thing we should do as youth is to celebrate other people's culture. We shouldn't be too entrenched our culture to the extent that we disrespect other people's culture. As youth, we need to, promote other people's culture. You attend their funerals, their way of worship, at least to try to integrate people's culture into our culture. So it's important that as youth, we deal with all forms of bigotry. We deal with all forms of bigotry. And that is avoidance of stigmatization. You don't stigmatize anybody because the person belongs to this ethnic group. In most cases, the minority ethnic group within a society, people tend to stigmatize them to the extent that they feel not to always let people identify them belonging to that particular ethnic group. So as youth, we need to do all forms of that. We'll stand up of people being harassed. People who have been harassed, as you need to stand up for them. We need to stand up and defend such people. The fact that they belong to the minority side shouldn't be a yardstick for us to underrate them or to use all forms of backwards against them. In conclusion, I would like to say that as youth, we would claim ownership over the narration of our own history. Throughout the ages, the history of the Black man has been told by other people is wrong. And in this history, they sometimes have to change the facts. So as youth, as Africans, it is important upon us to reclaim ownership over the narration of our own history and revive our cultural identity to strengthen a shared aspiration to achieve continental unity. Thank you very much once again for the opportunity. I am because you are.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was our brother from Ghana, Shahid Kasim. Thank you for that report. We are going to continue with our sister Binta Jallow from the Gambia. Yes, Binta, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Is my video on?
No, it's
okay.
yes, you're welcome.
Okay, good afternoon, good morning to others, good evening to others. I am greeting you guys all the way from the Gambia. I am Binta Jallow. You guys get me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. You can continue.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm pleased to join the platform for the first time. And subhanAllah, I'm having some troubles here. I don't know. Hello? Excuse me for that.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, then thank you. By the way, my name is Binta Jallo, all the way from the Gambia. I'm pleased and honored to join the platform for today, being the first time. So speaking about the Black phobia is something that we need to address at youth. We should try to give honor to ourselves as Blacks. In that form, togetherness, let's all try to be one. The separation of you being Black, I being Black, we should try to love ourselves first before others love us. We should try to honor ourselves first before any other person honors us. The discrimination that we face is a whole lot for Black. Wherever we are in the world, we have been pointed out as people who are with, how will I say it, like someone who is like, you are inflicted with this Blackness because you feel like being that Black. So we should try to honor ourselves as Black people, love one another. Let my pain be your pain. Let the pain of any other Black be your pain. With that, we can all work togetherness of this fighting this Afrophobia on us. And then for us also being an African, for that matter, we try to make a much more reconstruction our political issues to stabilize and have good governance. If our leaders also didn't give that right to us, we cannot have that right. Most of the problems that we face is in countries like any other countries. The Western influence is too bad on our own land. We are unable to have our own self-independence. We cannot have that independence until and unless that we understand our rights as Blacks. We respect ourselves and honor ourselves as Blacks, so that this Western influence can be away from us. They have enslaved us for so long. And it's right time for us, all Africans, to unite as one, to be as brotherhood, to be as sisterhood, to maintain that Africanism in us. With all due respect to any other race, we as Blacks have been suffering a lot. So we are Blacks, for that matter, we are one, united as one. Divided, you guys are fallen. United, you are one. So we should make everything possible to see Blackness being respected and honored. Being Black is not a discrimination. You being Black shouldn't be spotted out like you are a criminal or you are a felon to any other society. Wherever in the world, Blacks have been pointed very label. Being in the state, being in the Western world, Blacks suffered a lot. So we should try as Blacks to respect and honor ourselves as Blacks, to help one another, to maintain that Blackness in us. So I'm really happy and then delighted for the first time to join such a platform. Always I do follow Black Africans, wherever Africans have been, I always try to make my point of view and my comments on it. But this is the first time being in a platform to express my view internationally. So I am really happy and delighted to join you guys from all over the world, not only in Africa, wherever a Black person is, we say to you, salute, and when we always respecting and honoring our Blackness. Thank you to you all. Love you all.
Yes, thank you very much, Pinta, for that wonderful. Thank you too for joining us. I am because we are. Yes, up next we're going to have our brother Morisuku Joseph from South Sudan. Yes, Joseph, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank
us to present
you.
your report.
You first have to apologize for making it very late. I was caught up in some other urgent task that I had to complete. So today, in talking about this topic, I will focus my attention on one important thing that is happening on the African continent, especially in my country and some of the neighboring countries. And that is particularly to do with what we call family planning. And we know that there are a lot of organizations in our countries that are sponsored from outside by Western countries, particularly that are concerned with family planning. Why am I talking about this topic? Because 2005 on live TV, one of the greatest, the wealthiest man in America, Bill Gates, said that the population of Africa is growing, and that is definitely not good for Africa because it's what is causing Africa to be poor, and therefore the population of Africa has to be reduced or rather controlled. And so, why am I talking about this? Because it is very important for us to note that there's an African researcher who came up with a very important research where he said that actually the landmass of Africa, which is about 30.5 million square kilometers of landmass, has inhabitants of only 1.5 billion, okay, people. And while China, which has only 9.6 million square kilometers of land, has 1.4 million inhabitants, while India, on its part, only 3.3 million square kilometers of landmass, has a total of only 1.4 billion inhabitants. When you look at these numbers and you compare, and taking the fact that Africa, okay, has 60% of the world's arable land and 90% of the world's known raw materials, it's obvious that our problem in Africa is not overpopulation, okay? This means that Africa can still accept about 12 billion people if we take India as the standard, or else 11 billion, 4.4 billion people more if we take China as the standard. Now, I'm saying this because clearly overpopulation has not been our issue. There are groups outside our continent that are insisting that we are overpopulated and that poverty is as a result of our population, and therefore our population has to reduce. As such, there is that push for family planning. Now, I'm not against family planning. There's certainly some important uses for family planning. And we all know that in history, of course, our parents and our ancestors used family planning, although they used natural means. So definitely I am not against family planning. But the question I'm asking is why this insistence on reducing the population or controlling the population of Africa? I know we already know, especially from my history lectures, that we are used as an extraction economy for raw materials for industries of the developed world. That is obvious. So then, if our population grows, that means we'll use more of our resources for ourselves, and then we have less left for the developed world, and that is a good thing for them because it will tip the economic balance in our favor. And that definitely, based on the topic of discussion today, is a very critical thing. If we have a population that is small, okay, we know that the most economically strong countries in the world, look at America, it has population. Look at India, fast growing economy, 1.4 billion people. Look at China, it's now becoming the greatest economy in the world, 1.4 billion people. That means population is business. And if Africa is to become an economic giant, then therefore its population has to grow. But the most important thing is that as the population of Africa grows, we also need to gain skills, we need to gain knowledge so that we can be able to add value to our raw materials and use more of our raw materials productively for our own benefit. And that therefore will create, okay?
Yes, 30 seconds left, you can wrap up.
Thank you, Yvonne. So when this happens, a population that is growing, that is more skilled, that is more knowledgeable, more educated, we are able to process our own raw materials, on our continent. That creates sufficiency, where we will be able to produce goods that can be traded at a higher cost, and we'll be able to import less. And when our economies grow, that definitely creates, okay, a high standard of living for our people. And that even makes us less vulnerable to pressures from outside. So what is very important for us as Africans that we should really be focusing on is that, one, we should become self-sufficient. Two, we should be adding value to our products. And three, we must not accept the propaganda that population increase is the cause of poverty for Africa. The problem is skills and education. Thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you for listening. I am because we are Ubuntu. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much to our brother Mulesuku Joseph from South Sudan. I am because we are. Thank you for that wonderful report. Up next, we're going to have our brother Ife Sinachi Oruku from Nigeria. Yes, Ife Sinachi, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm fine by the grace of God. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you have 3 minutes to present your report.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're participating from. I thank everybody that is on board today's meeting, because it is not easy to always be here on for the sake of Africa, because that is why we are here. So thank you very much. And continuing on our topic, which is Afrophobia, I said I want to paint a picture so that we can see where we are getting it wrong as well. Because all this while, we are just saying we want to be free, give us independence, freedom of self-determination, all these terminologies, we use them. And even after we got that political freedom, which is independent, that Africa started attaining around the 1960s. Since then, I think it is self-evident that even today, we are not yet free. But in paper and pen, we were given freedom. And for me, I think we are now responsible for being stopped, because what is happening to us now is that we are stuck in this game of who controls who rules the world, you know? So in painting my picture, you know, we are talking about the negative attitudes against the people of Black descent, against their cultures and tradition, hatred, in other words, against the people of Black descent. And I'm saying, when these guys came, when the colonizers came, because we cannot discuss this without discussing the root cause of all these things, because it wasn't like this before. According to history, they say civilization started in Africa. And if civilization started in Africa, it means we were at the top of the pyramid at the ancient times. But we fell, just as the story of the Bible says that Adam fell from Garden of Eden. Maybe it is even a African greatness that they are ironically telling us about in the Bible. Because if you watch the Bible story, you see that it's so much related to African stories. So what I'm saying is, these guys came, when they came with those negative attitudes. For example, you see, our dressing code today, being African people, is still the Western pattern of dressing. When these white guys came, they established companies, which they said is employment, for us to be working for them, because this is where they get cheap labor and they can do anything. So when they came, they said, for you to be working for us, you have to dress this certain way. You see, that, for example, here in Nigeria, you have to wear Western clothes 4 times a week to work, and you have freedom to wear our cultural wear once a day. So automatically, you see, we are going to be patronizing what we wear 4 times a week, than what we wear once a day. If you come to hairstyle, African hairstyle, when they came, for you to be admitted into university, you have to cut your hair. So you look what they call decent. But for them, they could, or they can even till today, style their hair to the best of their interests. But here today, when a policeman see you in this country called Nigeria and you are carrying dread, which is just a style of your hair, they will start discriminating you, stigmatizing you, dealing with you, exploiting you. This is black to black Afrophobic activity. But this thing was established by the white people when they came. And since they left, we have refused to look within. These are the kind of pictures I want to paint. The burial rites today will practice here that we cherish. I don't think it's the burial rites that gives our ancestors, because our ancestors, they came with the process of burying them that will give them rest. You know?
Yes. About 30 seconds left.
Okay. Time is always short for these explanations. So, okay, let me, like the marriage we practice today, we are always talking about unity, African unity. If you talk of African unity, you should talk of African unity in 2 steps, microcosm and microcoism. That's the bigger picture and the little picture. When you talk of the little picture, you talk about the families. This is where they build a unity. That's the first form of unity, bonding man to a woman. And this is where unity stems from. If you don't get the bonding of a man and a woman right, there is no way the bigger picture is going to be united once the home is not united. We had a system of bonding them before, which makes marriage sweet. As of then, our men used to marry 5, but because they follows the process, it worked for them, it works. But now we have given marriage rights to any man that just wakes up and says he's a man of God because he carries the Bible and speaks with authorities that can prove, that he can't even prove if you ask him to. So these things are our challenges, and it is until we look inward to fix these things, establish institutions that will promote our own greatness. We don't have to go and beg for greatness. We have to achieve it. The only way we can achieve it is by establishing us a people, common things that will unite us, promote our greatness. Then when they see that we are projecting greatness, they'll be forced to respect us. Thank you very much. I remain blessed. I am because we are.
Thank you very much, Ifesinachi Oroko, for that wonderful report. Thank you for also attending. We are going to have our last speaker, Yazid Idris. Yes, Yazid, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself. Yes, can you hear us, Yazid? Sorry, Yazid, we can't hear you.
I'm just having a problem.
Yes, our brother Yazid has some issues with the microphone. So we're going to continue with the Pan-African healthcare class with Nana Akor. Yes, Nana Akor, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself, and also if you'd like to receive a shout out from her, you can just turn on your video. Yes, you're welcome, Nana Akor.
Thank you. Good day. Good morning, Yvonne. Hello, everyone. Fawn and Sanache and Afiki and Yazid and David. Hey there, Haki. And I think that's all the cameras, I think. So greetings, everyone. I'm glad to see your beautiful Black faces today. So today we are going to talk about high blood pressure and diabetes. We spent last week discussing the need to cleanse the body, different ways to detox, how to cleanse, the different paths of elimination, what herbs were good for, and foods that were good for the liver and the colon and the kidneys and the lungs and the skin. So I'd like to kind of highlight probably the two major, and I know heart disease is in there as well, and we have some other prevailing health conditions that afflict Black people, but I will focus on high blood pressure and diabetes today. And I was trying to pull some additional handouts. We will see if we are able to share those. Probably not, because I actually yeah, I didn't save. So let me just use the handout that we have here. I think you can see before you've seen this handout before. Wanted to kind of give a and some other documents and save them so I can share them. I'll do that moving forward. But I wanted to talk a little about high blood pressure and diabetes. Just so many of our people are afflicted with these conditions, and it's sort of very common. Perhaps in some cases it's hereditary, but I think it's probably more so cultural in terms of lifestyle and how we eat, how we live, and that is causing it to kind of run through our families. And so just wanted to pull up. I was going to share a company, a Black-owned company. It used to be Black-owned. We do know that sometimes things will start out a certain way and it gets popular and it gets bought out. But as far as I know, D-Herbs, this used to be a Black-owned company, and they've done really well with talking about a whole body cleanser and different herbal products. And I come across their site that I was trying to pull up here, but D-Herbs, I think DHerbs.com, I think is the website. But I wanted to just share some of the herbs that they highlighted for some of these conditions. And then of course they have a number of different products that you can get online. But since we're here at this glycemic index chart, let's talk a little bit about diabetes first. So we know that sometimes we're pre-diabetic, sometimes we're diabetic, sometimes there are just blood sugar irregularities and things of that nature. So to not get so much into the technical parts of it, I think just the perspective that I want to add today is that there is a way in terms of changing our diets and adding some natural supplementation that can positively impact the effects of diabetes. And so that's what I wanted to focus on today. So the first thing I want to mention is the need to change or improve our diets. And usually until you are full-blown diabetic, you may have a physician that will refer you to a dietitian that will share with you the glycemic index. What I would say is far before that, or long before that, we should be focusing on having a low glycemic diet. I would even contend that this is just as important as those of us focusing on becoming vegetarian and limiting our meats, depending on our lifestyles, our family history, and what our diet currently consists of. This may be even more important than becoming vegetarian. So I know there's always this quest to know where to start. When people are looking to become more healthy, looking to focus on their health, it's always a matter of where to start. I would say, let's start at what foods we are eating and what would most likely have a negative impact. So if you know, for example, you are heavy in the middle section, midsection, and you have pretty much a sedentary lifestyle where you sit at a desk, you don't have a lot of movement, or even if you do sit at a desk, but you are physically active and you work out several days a week, this may not apply to you. But for them that doesn't do a lot of walking and exercising, and you have a desk job, you know that you would fall into this category of potential risk. Also, if you know, for example, that you eat a lot of sugary foods or starchy foods, you would fit into this category, to where I would say using this glycemic index will be a game changer, a lifesaver even. And so this would be something I would more so start with, even more so than focusing on eliminating meat from the diet. I'm not saying that it's not good to eliminate meat from the diet, but I think when we talk about health and diets, or lifestyle changes or choices, or where to start in terms of getting healthy, most people simply look at it in terms of being vegetarian or not. So I want to just add another element into that. And if you have sat in on the class before, you know that a lot of times I will also put eliminating sugar even before eliminating meat. All of this is important. There are always going to be situations where you'll need to do all of the above. But if you had to choose, if you had to pick a first stop, if you have any of those characteristics that I just listed, then you may really want to start with following the glycemic index. And so this is a chart that simply gives you the starch content or the glycemic load of the foods that we consume. And most of these foods are going to be foods that of course contain starch. These are going to be your starchy vegetables. These are going to be your really sweet fruits. These are going to be some of your cereals, grains, snack foods, candies, things of that nature. You won't really find these high protein foods on a glycemic index. You're going to find those that have some sort of starch content. And basically, you want to follow this chart and utilize those foods that are 70 or below. So the chart will give you low, moderate, and high glycemic foods. And it's a reference chart. It's something you can refer back to, or if you know it's a category of foods that you're maybe challenged with or that you really like and you have in your diet, you'll learn which foods are going to be better choices for you. You can find a glycemic index pretty much anywhere. They will vary a little bit. I do not love this chart. I do think, and it is sort of an older chart, I do think that there are some newer, more updated charts that will give you a more accurate number. But the idea here is that know that usually in the right portions, you're going to do better with most pastas as opposed to rice. And most choices, you're going to do better with more high fiber fruits than your sweet fruits. So you're going to do better with apples and citrus and cherries and plums and peaches, as opposed to mangoes and grapes and melons and pineapple, right? You're going to do better with, say, a sweet potato as opposed to a russet baking potato or a white African yam. You're going to do better. Sweeteners are a big part. You're going to do better with a xylitol or agave nectar or monk fruit or those types of sweeteners, as opposed to a regular sucrose, table sugar, white table sugar, or even honey. Honey is not going to be your best option. This chart, I think, is generous with honey. Honey on every other chart that I've seen is definitely over 70. So, you know, again, I have some challenges with this chart. I don't think that all of these numbers here are accurate, but just know in these different categories, just get an understanding of what foods are going to be lower than 70 and which are going to be higher than 70, and try to stay somewhere around 70 and below. These higher foods that are going to be in the 80s and 90s and over 100, these are high glycemic foods that are going to spike your blood sugar and are not going to be good for you, even if you are not diabetic. But even if it's just a matter of maintaining good health and not overworking the pancreas and not bringing too many highs and lows and ups and downs to your glucose levels. So this is the glycemic index. And if we were talking about what herbs will be good for regulating blood sugar, when we talked about herbs in, I think, weeks 2 or 3, there was a handout that I shared about herbs for diabetes. And it's also in the Global Green Book, which I always make reference to, right? We still have it available, the healthcare edition, and we listed in that book herbs that help lower the blood sugar. And we know, and I don't have a handout available, so I'm going to read it to you. But we know that herbs like cinnamon and cloves, rosemary, oregano, Gymnea sylvestre, which is an Ayurvedic herb from India, curry leaves, sage, garlic, ginger, turmeric, fenugreek, cayenne, marjoram. These are all herbs that are good for lowering your blood sugar. So these are foods that you want to consider adding into your diet, cooking in with your foods. Aloe vera is also on that list, or should be on that list. Milk thistle, bitter melon. So there are several, you know, so at least 10, 15 herbs that you can easily incorporate into your diet. Some you will do in supplement form, some you can do in tea, some you can add directly to your food recipes and eat the cure, right? So these are just things that I wanted to call to your attention. Follow the glycemic index, limit how many sugary, starchy foods you consume, and add these herbs for supplementation. Let's go into blood pressure. So again, we know lifestyle, stress levels, sometimes, of course, body weight or mobility, all of these things we know can impact blood pressure as well. Certain habits such as smoking, inactivity, drug or alcohol use, there are different things that will get us to these places. But we know that we have to, in all means, by all means, really follow a good, healthy diet, a good stress relieving lifestyle to where we cut down on our risk. And again, let's not wait until we've been diagnosed with hypertension. And let's actually start focusing on having as stress-free of a life as we can. If it's changing our environment and we're able to do that, let's do that. If it's changing our job and the stress that it might cause, then let's do that. If it's changing certain bad habits, like quitting smoking or cutting out your high caffeine drinks, or at least lowering them, right? or if it's a matter of getting sufficient sleep or rest. You know, there are all these things we should start implementing even before we're at this really severe stage of hypertension, or really before we even get diagnosed. So I like this chart, as I've often said. I like how it gives us the range of different blood pressure measurements to get us to know and be familiar with what's considered hypotension or low blood pressure, all the way up to what is hypertension or high blood pressure, and all of the in-betweens and the risk levels and all the considerations that we should take while keeping track of our blood pressure. We know that we should cut down on high salt foods, medium salt foods, read labels, be very aware of the sodium content in foods, really steer away from these prepackaged foods. I have a thing against these ramen noodles or these oodles and noodles, and people say I'm bougie when I talk about it. And for those of you in Africa, there's a popular food. It's an inexpensive food that's packaged here. And I'm not even saying you don't have it, because I know of some women who are from Nepal. And they have their own version. So there may very well be a version of this on the continent. It's very popular here. Traditionally in America, marketed to lower income families because it's really inexpensive and not a bad concept. It's a little packet of dried up noodles and you heat them up or what have you. And there comes in it this seasoning pack. And therein lies my issue with it, right? The seasoning pack is this flavor pack. Haven't looked at the ingredients for a while. I am most certain it has monosodium glutamate in it, which is a flavor enhancer that is known to cause cancer and other issues, but also it is extremely high in sodium. So my problem is not the oodles and noodles or the ramen noodle packet itself. It's that little flavor packet or seasoning packet or salt packet, as I say, that comes with it. And so I don't know how it's marketed throughout the world, or the ingredients of this same type of flavor packet or salt packet, but that's the problem. These are examples of high salt foods. So if you're having something that's a single serving of something suited only for, say, one person, and maybe not even enough for one person, but it has 1,000 milligrams of sodium, that is an extreme amount of sodium. That is most definitely a high salt food that we have to avoid. So I would say, you know, if you are struggling with finances and need something inexpensive, sure, you can use the packs of the noodles, but throw that flavor packet away. Buy a bag of mixed frozen vegetables and add that to it, and get some other kind of maybe all seasoning that doesn't have a lot of salt in it. You can get a salt-free one, or get one that doesn't have monosodium glutamate or MSG in it to season it with. There are an array of herbs and spices that we can use to season our foods with. So we don't have to use these flavor packets that just add more problems, you know, than any help to our health or healing crisis. So hydrogenated oils, we also want to stay away from. This will also be in these prepackaged foods. We know that hydrogen has been added to the oils to lengthen the shelf life. So that's why these are bad. They've heated the oils. So we know that is also what makes the oils lack any nutrients or nutritional value. So these are not good, but again, they lengthen the shelf life of these foods, which is why they're put in these foods. This will not help you heal your body. So these are foods that we should stay away from. We should include vegetables and fruits that are high in certain vitamins and minerals: apples, avocados, broccoli, bananas, fish, grapes, oats, orange juice, water. These are things you should include in your diet. Certain herbs like hawthorn berry, garlic, basil, I lost my train of thought, juniper berry. There are several herbs that you can add to your diet: parsley, celery or celery seeds. These are always going to be good options for you to add to your diet to give it a boost at regulating your blood pressure. So these are things that you can add. We want to make sure we have a lot of minerals in our bodies to combat hypertension as well: calcium, magnesium, potassium. There's so many supplements that we can add. And again, we don't want to wait until we have a problem. We don't want to wait until it's extremely high and we're having headaches or vision problems, or we're not able to go throughout our day and function properly. Just as with diabetes, cinnamon is also good for regulating your blood pressure as well. I missed a few times. I said cinnamon, ginger. So these are cardamom. These are all herbs that we can add to our diets, cook with, drink as teas, take in supplement form, whether capsule forms or tincture form. These are going to be good options for us in terms of regulating our blood pressure. And as we spoke about a couple of weeks ago in terms of stress relief, just remember, whether it's cardiovascular disease, whether it's hypertension, whether it's diabetes, stress is a killer. Stress will cause a condition in a lot of cases, but if it did not cause the condition, it certainly will worsen a condition. And so we always have to keep track of how stressed we are, what is going on in our lives, what it is that we can do. And you know, I'm always about empowering ourselves, taking control, not feeling defeated, not feeling hopeless. So we have to always keep track of what it is we can control. There's so many things that we cannot. We have to always stay on top of that we can control. And then not be afraid to make movement on it, not being afraid to do something different and seeing if that works for us so that we don't stay into a bad situation. I always say we should not and do not have to be long suffering. So there are a lot of these situations where we can heal our bodies and come out of situations that sometimes we just accept as normal or as inevitable, but it's not. So let me just, in these last couple of minutes, go, and again, I'm referring back to the Global Green Book, where we list signs of diabetes and symptoms of hypertension and things like that, in case, because again, I want you to do these things we've discussed today prior to getting a diagnosis. I mean, if you already have that, know that you can possibly reverse it or at least improve the situation to where you can discuss with your primary care physician, reducing the medication or working your way off of medication. But if you've not been diagnosed with either of these, let's just go over a couple of diabetes symptoms, right? So get your blood sugar tested if you have any of the symptoms of diabetes. If you have any of the following diabetes symptoms, see your doctor about getting your blood sugar tested. Urinating a lot or often at night. Being very thirsty. Losing weight without trying. Feeling very hungry all the time. Having blurry vision. Having numb or tingling hands or feet. Feeling very tired. Having very dry skin, having sores that heal slowly, and having more infections than usual, right? These are listed on the site for Centers for Disease Control and Prevention as potential diabetes symptoms. So if you're experiencing these, you don't know why, then you should always get tested, consult your physician. And similarly, if we're talking about high blood pressure, these are symptoms of severe high blood pressure. And hopefully before it gets to this point, you maybe would have had yourself checked out, or your routine physicals or exams, this maybe would have come to light. But if your blood pressure is extremely high, there are certain symptoms to look out for, including severe headaches, nosebleeds, fatigue or confusion, vision problems, chest pain, difficulty breathing, irregular heartbeat, blood in the urine, pounding in your chest, neck, or ears. And then other people will feel symptoms such as dizziness, nervousness, sweating, trouble sleeping, facial flushing, and bloodshot eyes. And this comes from WebMD.com, right? And so just be aware, be conscious of what the potential symptoms and signs of these conditions are, so that you can stay on top of it, get an early diagnosis, or rule it out and figure out if it is something else that you can alter or tweak in some way. So there's always going to be, again, a way to empower yourself. You are the best, let's say, the best source to give all of the needed background information to your doctor. You know your life, you know your routine, you know what's normal for you, you know what goes on a daily basis, what's normal, what's abnormal. You take that information, you arm yourself with that information, take notes, keep track of dates, and then you take that information when you go in to consult with your primary care person, okay? And so now this handout here, so technically this is sort of the end of this cycle, and so I left this handout here, or this page here, just as sort of a review of what we've discussed. You know, we have discussed nutrition, we've discussed herbs, we've discussed homeopathics, we've discussed detoxing, we've discussed stress release. And so if we had to have a working definition of wellness, I just want you to think about that for a second. What would you consider a good definition of wellness? What does it mean to be well, right? So we know that holistic health or holistic wellness focuses on a balance between the physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health. So we would, of course, include all of those areas, I believe, right? We would make sure that we are well on all levels. But when we talked about stress release and determining our levels of stress, we know that it can even be broken down into greater categories than that, because we could talk about emotional stress, we could talk about financial stress, we could talk about relational or relationship types of stress. So being well in every and all categories of your life, having balance, being without any sort of illness or dis-ease would probably all be good working definitions of wellness. And we know that we control that. We know that we are our best advocate. And when we go for help, we find someone who's willing to teach us, that's willing to find the root causes of the condition, and then help us find a solution together. Not talking at you, not treating you as the disease itself, but a person that is working against or overcoming that disease. We know that, and I haven't talked a lot about this, but we know that the two, and from the holistic world, the two causes of disease are either toxicity or malnutrition. So you have to determine, what am I intoxicated with, right, or by? And what is it that I have to cleanse or detox from? And then how am I malnutrition? What am I lacking? What do I need to add or increase in my nutritional makeup? So, and all of these areas here, we know that we have to address these areas, make sure that we're moving our bodies, that we're drinking enough water, that we're practicing self-care and stress release, and that we stay in balance as much as possible. So that is just sort of a quick review. If you have any questions, feel free to forward them to me. If you need handouts, and you've not gotten those 4 packets of handouts before, feel free to request those and I will gladly send them. At this point, we're kind of using or going through each of those packets, but just sort of spread out. But if you've received those 4 packets, you have that information already. But if not, feel free to email me and I'll send them out to you. So I look forward to seeing you next week. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And as always, I bid you good health and peace.
Yes, thank you very much, Nana Akua, for that wonderful lecture. I just shared your email in the comment section. If there is someone who would like to receive the handouts, they can reach out to you. Thank you once again. Have a wonderful weekend. Yes, we are going to continue with the Pan-African History class with Dr. Tyrone Wright. Yes, Dr. Wright, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
I can hear you and you see me in 2 seconds. So I'm out of my element today a little bit. So I will be, I'm going to stick to the time. If you could give me a time check, Yvonne, I would appreciate it, just so that I stay on schedule. I'm out of town. I might appear a little crooked on camera. Okay. So everyone can see me. So welcome to the Pan-African History and Organizing course. So last week I gave you the readings while we were together. I can get the camera to be a little bit better. Oh. All right, so I'm just gonna hold it. So last week we were together. I gave you the readings for this week, right? Which was Nkrumah, his address to the OAU on, let me see, my camera could be a little cleaner. His address to the OAU in 1964. We went over the Organization of African Unity's demands, what they wanted. And this is, as I stated last week, on the heels of the movement for independence on the African continent. And I'll say more in the movement, the revolutions, the liberation struggles on the African continent. 1957 is Ghana. And then 1957 is Ghana. And then, of course, 1960, 1961, 1962, 17 African nations take their independence. And some of the issues are still the same, but we saw, hopefully you all read that. And this week, it's already posted, because I find that's a more effective way to do things, to post it when we're on, instead of saying wait till Monday and then something happens on Monday. But the resolutions for the Organization of African Unity, I'm sorry, the resolutions for the Pan-African Congresses, the 1st and the 5th, 2 important, most important of the several Pan-African Congresses co-initiated by Du Bois. Some of you may remember Du Bois is the sole survivor of the Pan-African Conference in 1900. So we remember the chapter we read on Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanists. And Du Bois, if you remember what is talked about in that chapter, we go over the fact that Du Bois' great contribution to the African continent is the fact that he remembers and carries the torch of Pan-Africanism from 1900 to 1919 and initiates, in conjunction with others, the Pan-African Congresses, which are continuous. Now, I'm intentional about putting these two documents back to back because, one, they're not documents that you would just see every day, right? The resolutions from a conference, the two significant Pan-African Congresses, the first and the fifth. But in conjunction with last week's reading, which was Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah speaking to the OAU, the initiation of the Organization of African Unity. And if you read it in totality, you know that there's a regional feel to it. There's two different camps to the OAU. However, what the resolutions affirm, okay, and is the next step to is saying in the fifth Pan-African Congress, and we're going to look at it, we have to have total independence and liberation for the African continent. We cannot be exploited, oppressed by the Western world. So that brings us back to the concept of Pan-Africanism. Unity for what? Unity for the purpose of eradicating oppression and exploitation everywhere we are, right? So both are on that same message, and it is a continuum. Part of what this course is all about, or the seminar is all about, is getting you to understand that we are in a tradition, that there is a continuous struggle that many different people engage in over a period of time. And that for Du Bois is one of his major, I would say, something he champions, okay? He's notable for that because of the simple fact there's so much time between the first Pan-African Conference and the first Pan-African Congresses, okay? 19 years. And by 1919, he's the only one living. Du Bois and Nkrumah certainly have a relationship. Many of you probably already know that Du Bois leaves the United States and expatriates. He is one of the few who revokes. He doesn't just go to Ghana, he revokes his US citizenship because he is sort of, I don't want to say disgruntled, but he is fed up with the situation in the United States. And here's why. Important thing to understand if you globally, but an important thing if you're in the United States to understand why Du Bois is fed up. Du Bois is someone who is born in 1858 or 59. Let me see. No, hold on. Sorry, I'm wrong. 1868 or 69. He's born after the Civil War. And that being said, because he's born after the Civil War, he's born during the period of Reconstruction. And he is someone who champions the idea that the Reconstruction amendments must be invoked. 13th Amendment that ended slavery in the United States, but then the 14th and the 15th Amendment, which gave rights. So in other words, 14th Amendment gave naturalization, something that people from around the world that come to the United States still benefit from. It means that you can become naturalized. You could possibly not be born here, come here and go through a process and be a citizen. But also it means that anyone born in the United States would be a citizen at the time of their birth. So if you're born in the United States, you're a US citizen. So that's called naturalization. That being said, the 15th Amendment did what? Something that in the United States in particular, we're still fighting about. It gives the right to vote without discrimination, okay? It gives every citizen the right to vote. Well, Du Bois is born in the midst of that period, and he becomes a champion of saying, this is what the Civil War in the United States produced. It has produced these Reconstruction amendments. These are the fruits of our labor. This is what we fought for, and they need to be fully invoked, okay? He lives a very long time. He dies in his 90s, and he sees the United States in particular not carry through or make good on these amendments to the Constitution. So he's fighting a dual battle while he's connecting with the African continent, because he understands that our reality is intertwined. Our futures are intertwined. He understands that a strong Africa means a strong African diaspora. But he's also trying to hold the US government to the feet to the fire and say, fulfill the promise of these amendments, okay? We fought a war. These amendments are written in the blood of the African people who fought and struggled for their freedom in a war that wasn't even about them, but they made it about them. So Du Bois is living long enough to see those amendments come into reality, but never be fulfilled. He, more than anyone else, realizes that all the things that would go on in the United States through to the 20th century, to the civil rights movement, through Jim Crow, he can see how there's an avoidance of the fulfillment of the construction amendments. So at 1963, early 1960s comes, he is more than angry, I would say, and justifiably, okay? He knows that there doesn't need to be a civil rights bill or this or that. He knows that the US government needs to simply fulfill its promise in the amendments. So he is now facing Africa. He's already invested in Africa as early as 1900, and he has come to the conclusion that there's nothing that's going to happen in the United States that is going to be beneficial to the African population that has survived slavery, defeated the institution of slavery, participated in the defeat of the institution of slavery, and snatched their freedom in that war that wasn't really truly about the African population. And he's seeing that there's been intentional legislative aversion towards fulfilling those amendments. So he is, he's the old sage who has lived through it all. He does not have to be told about it. He has lived it. And so Nkrumah, who has come to the United States and is educated in the United States and returns to Ghana and leads the Gold Coast to independence, now Ghana, they team up, okay? They are in unison. They are unified around this idea of unifying Africa and the power of African people reverberating through from the continent to its diaspora. So Nkrumah sort of gives Du Bois a safe place, asylum. He tells them, come to Ghana, come here, like, to hell with all of that. Come here and work on the Encyclopedia Africana, which he does not complete. He passes away, Du Bois, before he completes it. But this is with the knowledge that in many ways, there is a dialectical relationship going on between African people in the diaspora and African people on the continent of Africa, right? And that's an important point. If you get anything from this history, is the fact that we are in touch, we are communicating. So what we're doing today, for those of you who are on the continent and those of us who are out here in the United States and the diaspora, what we're doing, we're using technology, but this is nothing new. We are collaborating, we are communicating about our collective struggle, okay? And that is sort of what's going to segue to what we'll discuss next week and what the lecture will be on when I start to cover other nationalists and delve into how do we deal with ethnic differences and diversity in the face of our collective struggle. Okay, we're seeing it on the continent now, right, with Niger. And I did say to you all that I would do a presentation on some of the dynamics with Niger, Burkina Faso, and other countries in the region that are supporting Niger. Because it is important to understand that our issue, our dilemma is the same: imperialism, colonialism, on a day-to-day basis, expressed as white supremacy and culture worldwide, right? So this dialectical relationship is one that has always existed. Some of us, more than others, realize that we have a collective struggle. In the United States, our communities are used as an extraction site. Right? Ever wonder why in the Black communities in the United States, everyone has a business, but we have limited numbers of businesses in our own community, right? So the Asians have a business, the Arabs have a business, white individuals, Anglo-Americans have businesses, all in the Black community of people who are supposedly poor. However, they extract resources in our community, and it's hard. I'm at a conference, and one of the issues of the conference is how hard it is for Black people to establish business. So just so you know, I'm at the National Black Business League, an organization that was founded in 1900. Thank you, Yvonne. That was founded in 1900 by Booker T. Washington to help Black people establish businesses, establish industry that we owned and that we also patronized, right? So his brand of Pan-Africanism, Booker T. Washington, if you remember, was independence through industry, right? That was his path, his means for us to obtain liberation. So my point is that on the African continent, what do we have? We have foreign nationals using Africa as an extraction site, right? Extracting resources. What is the issue with the pipeline going through Niger up into Europe, right? They're extracting resources to power their needs. However, what does Africa get for it? And we know that the heart of Africa, the Congo and the 9 surrounding countries, hold a bulk of the world's resources and therefore is coveted by the world and heavily exploited. European nationals, European nations, you could say imperialist nations, extract those resources, mine in those regions. However, it's not to the benefit at all to the masses of the people. Right? So everywhere we are being utilized, either our persons, we are human resources, or there is an extraction of the actual resources in the region, cobalt, coltan, and all kinds of things that are beneficial to the Western world, but not necessarily beneficial to us. So this is our collective struggle then and now, right? This is not a new struggle, and we are in the tradition. So part of our seminar is for you to learn the proponents, right, and the organizations that have continued the struggle and have carried that torch of this collective and continuous struggle. So back at it, I'm going to share my screen really briefly so that you can see the document that you have. It is the resolutions from the 1st and the 5th Pan-African Congresses. Once again, remember the first Pan-African Conference, and then in 1900, and then Du Bois initiates the Pan-African Congresses in 1919, right? The sole survivor. And there are 5 significant Pan-African Congresses, but the first and the 5th being the most significant. Why? The first establishes what the Congresses are about. The 5th is at a moment in time where African leadership have come to intellectual maturity, political maturity, to say that these are the demands that we have, and that the total liberation of Africa is the ultimate objective. Okay. What we did not understand at the time is that the West would morph, and total liberation would end up not being total liberation, but end up being neo-colonialism, which we are all still in a neo-colonial state, right? On the African continent and in the diaspora, we are in a neo-colonial phase of our struggle. What does that mean? That means that we have Black leadership, okay? We have Black leadership, but do they serve the interests of African people? And that goes back to that first chapter that I gave you, Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanists. Can we weigh and measure? Can we qualify what we get and conclusively say it is to our benefit? If it is not, what it produces, what the struggle produces, what our engagement produces, if it is not good and beneficial for us, then it is not Pan-Africanism, right? Because Pan-Africanism remedies our condition. It addresses our condition of being exploited and oppressed everywhere we are. Okay, so this is the moment, the 5th Pan-African Congress, historic, the others were not historic, but this 5th Pan-African Congress was the moment where in unison, in a unified way, African leadership says, no more. We must move towards, and of course, what takes place right after is a number of African nations fighting for and achieving independence. But when we qualify and look back at the history record, we see that it was questionable independence, meaning so many of you are watching what's happening in Niger and other African countries that have been colonized by the French. The French in particular still maintain economic control, right? Even simply the use of the CFA, right? The CFA, the CFA. This is French money being used in Africa. The French, France in particular, controlling the economic reality of African nations. Why? If they're independent, right? So when we qualify things, we're allowed to see, we're able to see that that's not sufficient. A sovereign, independent African nation does not need another country to print their money and say these are the limits of it, right? They need to have the economic or the resource might to back that money. Meaning France does not have the resource might to back the money. They're just printing money, okay? And in many ways, exploiting the economy and exploiting the regions of the countries that they're in. Okay, so let me just go off camera. I'm going to share the document. And hold on one second. Let me just cue it. Oh, okay, it's already there. All right, so. Yvonne, hold on. Let me see something. Did something change? Oh, okay, no. All right. Obviously, guys, this time I always use my phone, but this time I have to use my phone because of my location. Okay, so here we go. Oh, sorry guys. That was not what I wanted to show you all. All right, so here it goes right here. If you wanted to see in our course, this is right here, the Pan-African Congresses, okay? So with these 5 minutes, I'll just show you what is there, okay? So you see the Pan-African Congress resolutions of 19, it took place in Paris. And I'm not going to read to you, I won't insult you, but I will just address a couple of high points of the second Congress, of the fifth Congress. So there are two documents here. You see this right here? This first page is just a one pager, the resolutions of the Pan-African Congress, the first in 1919. Okay. But then the fifth in Manchester, 1945. So make note of the dates. 1945 is when the fifth Pan-African Congress takes place. Okay. And then Ghana, a little over 10 years after that, achieves independence, non-violent in the sense, but there were violent clashes, but it was not an armed struggle, right? Only Guinea-Bissau has an armed struggle in West Africa. Although there are violent clashes in some of the other nations, the only country that has a long, protracted struggle is Guinea-Bissau, where there is armed force used by the men and women there. And Emile Cabral will call it a people struggle. So this is the fifth Pan-African Congress, okay? And these are the resolutions. And notably, it ends with demands, right? Okay, it ends with demands of what must happen for African people and their nations in light of this brewing wave of African independence. So this is 1945, 1957 is Ghana as independence, and Nkrumah declares the total independence and liberation of the African continent. In other words, he says the independence and the liberation of Ghana is nothing, means nothing unless it leads to the total independence and unification of the African continent. You know, he talks about today, Ghana's independence, tomorrow, United States of Africa. He says that. There's a great quote he affirms in his speech in Ghana's independence. That being said, the two, Du Bois and Nkrumah, are two guiding lights in many ways in the face of this period. 1957, Ghana, and then 1960, you have 1960, you have the Congo, and you have the tragedy that is Patrice Lumumba. If you watched the film the 2 weeks before, Cuba and African Odyssey, you know that it opened with the story of Patrice Lumumba and the independence of the Congo, and how Patrice Lumumba was essentially assassinated at the behest of the United States in particular, and their independence would be eclipsed by these outside forces. Okay, so if you missed that go back to it. It's posted in the course. Cuba, an African Odyssey is the film. And it goes all around to many of the struggles that we're going to talk about and the leadership. But let's just look at this. Hope you guys can see it. I might have to turn my phone or camera the other way so that it could be broader. Let me see. Okay. So that's more readable. So the delegates believe in peace. How could it be otherwise when for centuries the African peoples have been the victims of violence and slavery? Yet if the Western world is still determined to rule mankind by force, then Africans as a last resort may have to appeal to force in the effort to achieve freedom. Even if force destroys them and the world, we are determined to be free. We want education. We want the right to earn a decent living, the right to express our thoughts and emotions, to adopt and create forms of beauty. We demand for a Black Africa autonomy and independence so far and no further than it is possible in this one world for groups and peoples to rule themselves subject to inevitable world unity and federation. We are not ashamed to have been an age-long patient people. We continue willingly to sacrifice and strive. We are unwilling to starve any longer while doing the world's drudgery in order to support by our poverty and ignorance a false aristocracy and a discarded imperialism. We condemn the monopoly of capital and the rule of private wealth and industry for private profit alone, hence the resource issue. We welcome economic democracy as the only real democracy. Therefore, we shall complain, appeal, and arraign. We will make the world listen to the facts of our condition. We will fight every way we can, in every way we can, for freedom, democracy, and social betterment. The declaration to the colonial people. So now they're talking to, in the resolutions, to the colonial peoples, right? So these are two: declaration to the colonial powers and declaration to the colonial peoples. We affirm the right of all colonial peoples to control their own destiny. All colonies must be free from foreign imperialist control, whether political or economic. The people of the colonies must have the right to elect their own governments without restrictions from foreign powers. We say to the peoples of the colonies that they must fight for these ends by all means at their disposal. The object of imperialist powers is to exploit. By granting the right to colonial peoples to govern themselves, that object is defeated. By granting the right to colonial peoples to govern themselves, that object is defeated. Therefore, the struggle for political power by colonial and subject peoples is the first step towards and the necessary prerequisite to complete social, economic, and political emancipation. The Fifth Pan-African Congress therefore calls on the workers and the farmers of the colonies to organize effectively. Colonial workers must be in the front of the battle against imperialism. Your weapons, the strife, boycott, are invincible. We also call upon the intellectuals and professional classes of the colonies to awaken to their responsibilities by fighting for trade union rights, the right to form cooperatives, freedom of the press, assembly, demonstration, and strike, freedom to print and read the literature which is necessary for education of the masses. You will be using the only means by which your liberties will be won and maintained. Today, there is only one road to effective action: the organization of the masses. what would that be? That would be called Pan-Africanism, right? Organization of the masses around a collective issue. And in the organization, the educated colonials must join. Colonial and subject peoples of the world unite. Okay, so this is in essence what the declarations were in light of the Fifth Pan-African Congress. And if you go back, I'll let you, do some work on your own. You will see that the first Pan-African Congress is not that much different from this eventual Fifth Pan-African Congress, said to be the most important. What was important, and I'll cover it next time, some of the notables that were there, the heads of states. And it signaled to not only Africa, but to the rest of the world that African leadership was united around this. The only thing is that, hindsight is 2020. We did not see this neo-colonial stage where we would have pseudo-independence and that there would be puppet governments implemented in Africa who will do the jobs of the colonial forces for them and to African people, right? So that brings us to where we are right now. Always qualifying what is happening. The people of Niger clearly were astute to qualifying things. And you see this over and over again in Africa and everywhere else. You can't hear me? Someone said be audible. I don't know, that's supposed to mean. But anyway, you see this over and over again where the people will oust a president or a leader, and it is due to the fact that they consider them an enemy of the people because they are not serving the interest of the people. Okay, so and very often, like in the case of the Congo post-liberation, that was a puppet government, right? Put in place post Patrice Lumumba by the US government and other Western nations. You had the installment of Mobutu Sese Seko. Okay. And he would rule, he was a military ruler, and he would rule, very arbitrarily and even violently. So, okay, so you have that to read. Some of you might need to revisit the film, and then we'll start in one by one, looking at African leadership who were proponents of Pan-Africanism. I'm going to do some new ones for those of you who have been coming back. We're going to look at people like Jomo Kenyatta and others. Look at Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe. Look at other leadership in South Africa. Typically, we always look at Amilcar Cabral and figures like him who were astute enough to address. We already looked at Thomas Sankara, who is more contemporary than some others that I just mentioned. But we'll look at how they approach the conditions and the situation post their independence struggle. And notably, East and West Africa have one significant difference, with the only exception being Guinea-Bissau. Much of East and Southern Africa have to engage in some level of armed struggle or active conflict, very often violent clashes, or long protracted struggles. For example, in Kenya with the Freedom and Land Party, wrongfully dubbed the Mau Mau, because you had a European settler population in East and Southern Africa, right? Which posed a problem. West Africa, not as much, but they're there, okay? But there are settler populations as quiet as it's kept. Those of you who live in certain countries, you know this. But notably in East and Southern Africa, Europeans would settle in mass. So it becomes a very obvious struggle over the land. okay, and the nation. All right, so I'm gonna stop there. I hope I'm not too off. Okay. Be audible. I don't know what that means. Dr. Wright. I thought I was audible. Okay. Thank you. Time is up. I'm 4 minutes over. I'm 10 minutes over, but all right. Doesn't look like there's the whole bunch. All right, hold on. Your video is stopped. Your microphone is unmuted. Okay. Doesn't look like I have any questions this week, but thank you all for staying to the end. I am because we are. Please do read the 1st and 5th Pan-African Congress resolutions. Very important in general to know if you want to think you can, deal with Pan-Africanism on an international level, particularly the African continent. Thank you, Joseph. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. I am because we are. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye,
Yes,
guys.
thank you very much, Dr. Wright, for that
Okay,
wonderful.
thank you.
I am because we are, and I would like to thank everyone that attended this call. And until the end, have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe. I am because we are.